Welcome to the Spawn Chunks, episode number 20 for Monday, December 17th, 2018. My name is Joel Duggan, and jingling along with me, as always, is my friend Johnny, but you may know him better as Pixlriffs. Hello, sir.
Hello. Our last podcast of 2018, but not our last podcast overall. I should hasten to add that because I had a...
Don't use language like that.
I had a moment that was like, yeah, it's going to be our last podcast of the year, and then I was like, oh God, what if I say last podcast and everyone goes, what? Like, you didn't tell us this was going to be a 20 episodes and done? Like, you got a hard out at 20? No, of course not. But this is the last time we're going to be saying 2018. At the beginning of these, which is, oh gosh,
yep.
that's
take your bets now as to how many episodes and how many takes it takes us in the new year to get 2019 out without 2018.
We're gonna change the show notes, but it's all gonna it's all gonna kick off. Saying January again is gonna be a strange thing.
Yeah, I find it hard to believe it's December 17th.
Oh, yeah.
That's where I'm just like, whoa, what? I have how long to get ready for Christmas? I've got how long to finish these commissions before, because I try to give myself a break at the holidays. I don't always get a whole week off, but I try to stop working around the 22nd, and then if I have a lot to do, if I need to do a lot of work, then I will work between Christmas and New Year's. But I generally... January 1st and maybe January 2nd, I try to just take it easy. I don't go back until the 3rd or the 4th. Or sorry, I shouldn't say that. I'm talking about in between Christmas and New Year's. I mean Boxing Day. So like 28th, 29th, I might do some work, but I try not to put in like a full
it's always
schedule.
It's a weird gray area between Christmas and New Year where you're like, I have all this time that I feel like I could be doing something because these just feel like normal days. It's like after everyone's had all the Christmas stuff has maybe gone home again, but then New Year is on the horizon, so you don't want to really commit to getting back into work just yet because you're going to have a couple of extra days. But yeah, it's a funny one. It's the reason I've been backlogging episodes for my survival guide series because I'm actually spending a week up in the north of England where my family lives. My mum and dad and both my sister and her husband all live up there, along with some sort of other relatives from that side of the family. So we're all kind of in one place for Christmas a lot of the time. So this week I've been backlogging survival guide episodes. I've been transporting villagers around. I have a mending an infinity villager that now lives in my base. That was last week's survival guide, was basically finding that guy and getting him there. It's funny, he traded mending as his first trade, which I was incredibly happy about. Brought him back to the base, unlocked the next trade, he had infinity, unlocked the final book trade, it was like Curse of Vanishing or something, and it was more expensive than the other two books combined. So I was like, yeah, you can stay here, but buck your ideas up, mister. But yeah, I've been doing a lot of survival guide stuff, really enjoying being in a single player world and just kind of logging in and doing whatever whenever and not having to worry about keeping abreast of the other developments that would be on a multiplayer server. It's actually kind of refreshing.
I can see that being very tempting. I mean, I play on 2 multiplayer servers now, and granted, the Citadel is a lot of me and some people that play very casually. But I, as a considerate person, you're always taking everybody's, we'll say server livelihood into consideration. You don't want to overstep or it's not. It's for that. It's less about the building and more about like the data packs and like what do we want to do, like what features of the game do we want to turn on or off and blah blah blah. And so you're always kind of considering that kind of stuff. But I in playing on Vast and logging in and playing, what I like about the multiplayer server there is that it's so busy, so there's never a loss for something to do, and the plans are so large that it's like if you're bored with what you're doing, you can just email or drop someone a line in the Discord, and there's always someone that would be just like, yes, please help me dig this giant hole. Just there's always something to help with where you don't have to think. Someone just aims you and says, hey, collect this or help there or whatever. So that's nice. But yeah, creatively, I've definitely been inspired by doing stuff on Vast and wanting to do my own single player. And I'm like, nope, Joel, you're not allowed. There's no way.
There's not enough hours in the day.
No. And you've been building up a backlog, and I've been kind of saving up the backlog because over the holidays, one of the things I want to do is catch up on your survival series. I've actually been recommending it to friends. I've had a number of people on Facebook, probably just because kids are getting ready to be off in the holidays and people are talking about Christmas gifts and what kids are into and stuff like that. And they've been talking about Minecraft. It's like, my kid is just, he just discovered Minecraft, or he's all of his friends are in it, or the trends at school are so weird. Like 1 minute it's this game and the next minute it's another. And so they were asking for, kind were complaining about content, I was like, oh, I've got some recommendations for you. So of course I recommended the survival guide, and then, Wells and some of the other hermits. And basically they were looking for like family friendly, content they didn't have to really vet for their kids. They could say like, look, he's like 8. It's like, yeah, you can sit him down or her down, let them watch this stuff. It's fine. I mean, sure, monitor your screen time, but like you don't have to worry about the content itself. There's no swearing, there's no lewd stuff. It's all just really fun, creative content. And inspiring. Like it's the kind of thing where like I don't have kids, but I would imagine I would be really keen on letting my kids watch things like Decidedly Vanilla and Survival Guide, because it's creative. Like it's not just mindless stuff.
Yeah,
right?
I feel like that's one of the things that sets Minecraft apart from other games. Is it's a very proactive game, and it allows for that kind of level of artistic creativity and imagining stuff that isn't present in some of the other games where it's just like objective based or shooter based or that kind of thing. You've always got to be thinking about what's coming up next, and it allows for some very inventive stuff. I mean, if you're looking at stuff like Redstone, for example, it's basically giving your kid a background in electronics from age 4. So
Yeah.
there are definitely elements of that, and there's a chance to have some fun as well. Like one of the other things I recorded this week was a quick collab with my buddy Loy, who I do the Hermitcraft recap with. He loves playing horror maps on Minecraft Bedrock Edition, and he sometimes does like art for the people who sell their maps through the marketplace. So he gets the hookup. He gets like, a copy of a map before it launches, or maybe somebody will just send him a copy of it to kind of review. And we played a kind of horror-themed map, kind of along the same line as the Slender Man kind of games, where you're just walking around getting notes and trying not to get eaten by the big scary thing. And yeah, it's just a really nice kind of mansion build with lots of different rooms and randomized objectives to go through. And even that is kind of creativity in and of itself, because it's, showcasing somebody else's work and what's possible with that. There's a great kind of resource pack in there, and it's genuinely quite a fun experience, but a very short one as well. We managed to play through this map 3 times in a matter of about 20 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So that, yeah, there's a lot of these kind of short, bite-sized kind of experiences that you can have with Minecraft, and then go back to playing the kind of the core game experience, the survival game, the one that we all know and love at this point.
Yeah. And I think too that it's nice that it's not one of those games that requires you to be, 16 with twitch reflexes.
Oh, yeah.
To survive. I mean, like, potentially, depending on how tech savvy they are, grandparents could play this with grandkids on the couch.
And frequently
on
they do.
Xbox.
Yeah, I've definitely heard from them.
Yeah, like it's not a super difficult thing to do. So I'm curious, because of I'm looking forward to catching up on Survival Guide over the holidays. Have you got into now building stuff, like instructions on that? Like, you started to encroach on your own one chunk build territory?
I haven't actually done much in the way of like planning and preparing builds. We've done a couple of things, and most of the actual building is stuff I've done sort of off camera for the most part. I mean, I've started decorating a sugarcane farm, which I kind of said, we're going to build the inside of this first, because the actual functional sugarcane farm part is the bit that matters, but I'm going to build a house around it, because I don't like to have a farm just sitting there in the open with no context for it in the surrounding environment.
Right.
The other thing I've done is plan this giant wheat field and build a windmill. And I built the windmill on camera, but it's the windmill from my one chunk tutorial. So I kind of said, I'm going to build this and talk about my philosophy when it comes to building, what I like to do to integrate my builds into the surrounding environment, and what I can imagine going in the other places around me while we're building this thing. If you want to see the step-by-step tutorial, just go and watch the one chunk video, because that's all there for you. So I'm trying to tie it back in, and thankfully, that windmill is something that kind of fits in with the scale of what I've built. But if I was going to build my one chunk rustic house, it's actually a little bit smaller than the starter house I created, because the starter house was built with, I'll need to store a bunch of stuff in here and have enchanting and brewing and everything all in the same place.
Right.
So now I'm kind of scaling up my vision for what this area is going to be like. And so I'm thinking I'm going to try out a bit of stuff off camera and do a little bit of building off camera before I settle on, okay, I think I know what the style is for this area. Now here's how I plan it all out. It also helps me kind of crystallize my thoughts when it comes to that stuff, because I don't always explain what I do super well. And that's been the battle with Survival Guide, is explaining everything in a concise way instead of just following my instincts and doing what comes naturally.
Stuff that you've done 1,000 times, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's always the trouble with any kind of instruction or breakdown is that you really have to slow yourself down to like, okay, what if I've been playing Minecraft for 5 minutes? Like I
Hmm.
need to kind of look at this from a brand new perspective.
And
I
it's been funny seeing people comment on that as well and saying like, "Oh, you're going at such a slow pace." And I'm like, "Yes, because this is a guide for newish people." And like, I acknowledge all the time that there are people who are watching this who, might just be here to pick up the odd tip here and there because they've already been playing Minecraft for 4 or 5 years. And
yeah.
there's people in the comments have said, "Oh, I didn't know that you could do that when I say brew a potion of weakness to cure a zombie villager without using nether wart, because you can do that. You just pop in a fermented spider eye." And they're like, "Oh, that's a tip I didn't know." And
Right.
stuff like that comes up for those people. So I encourage them to stick around because there's always something you've forgotten that it's easy to learn again.
I did not know that either, actually.
There
That's
you
good.
go.
That's good to know.
There's your tip for the week. You're
Tip for the week.
welcome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Merry Christmas.
Feather in the cap. Merry Christmas. Nice. Feather in the cap. It's funny that you mentioned scale because that's something that I've been struggling with lately. And
Uh-huh.
I'm curious that when you get to the building, building more complex stuff on Survival Guide because curves are hard.
Oh yeah.
Uh, and I have been struggling with both. So I was streaming last week and dealing with some stuff on the Citadel, and it's a curved staircase. It's not rocket science,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not a circle either. It's like an S curve. So it comes
Yeah.
in one way, curves, and then curves out the other way. And I was trying to get it to look right, trying to get it to look even, trying to get it to be wide in the middle but narrow at the end. And oh, dude, it took me 3 hours to get this thing right.
Yeah.
And it was like I to the point where I was getting concerned with like how many times I was going up and down this ladder to look at it from above on stream. Like I made a dirt pillar and put a ladder on it just so I can get up and down and look at the thing and say like, okay, where do I need to move this out by a block? And every time I went up, I just had to edit it just a little bit more and a little bit more. And it just reminded me that like, when you're attempting stuff like that, planning in the early stages is essential. And so I've been spending a lot of time planning for stuff on the Vastin server. I've been voluntold that I am working on the tree
Mm-hmm.
in Vastin. I think in part that I did some concept art and people really liked it. And I'm there's two artists currently on the build team in Vastin. One pretty sure it's Pixel Brew. He's a graphic designer though, so
Mm-hmm.
I don't know necessarily what his drafting chops are like, but he's been really busy lately. He's got a family, so I just kind of went in and said, all right, I'd like to try and lay this tree out because we're at the stage now where people want to build the city, but the city needs to know where the castle is, and the castle needs to know where the tree is. So
Yeah,
it all
yeah.
kind of
There's a
goes out
hierarchy.
from
Yeah.
There's
Going
there's
place.
a focus. It's a giant, not a giant ring, but essentially the center of the city is this tree. So you can't really build up to something where you don't know where the something is.
Yeah.
So I had to go in and I had to make some circles, and I mean they're rough. They're just meant to be like, okay, this is probably the biggest the tree is going to get. So if you don't come any closer than this, then we're fine. And so I've been drawing these curves in the air, and I'm thinking about like I come from a 2D background. Like I draw classically flat Photoshop paper. Like I don't do modeling. So Minecraft is kind of like this weird in between where it's like really low res modeling.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm trying to figure out the best approach to draw this tree or create this tree and show guidelines for people. So we've picked this point in the map where you're viewing the tree from like the shore. And so I can take a screenshot from the same location every time and then drop that into Photoshop. So why I did not think to do some pixel art of the stairs for 20 minutes before my stream and save myself probably 2 hours of
Yeah.
messing around and just trying the stairs were so frustrating, probably more so because I had a live audience. I was like, okay, here I am failing at Minecraft for 2 hours.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
but the tree is coming along quite nicely, and what I'm doing, and for anybody out there, I'm curious for the technical community to send me some tips for two reasons. One, I have never built anything this large. To give you an idea, the tree starts at about Y 88, 80, like 90, and goes to build height.
Right. Yeah.
it
So we're
goes to
talking like
256.
we're talking roughly
170.
like 170, 180 blocks.
Yeah, it's mahusive. And it's also not a straight line. Like it's not a Minecraft tree. Like it winds. Think like, twisted. Think like bonsai tree covered in frost
Mm-hmm.
and that scale. Now it's thinner. It's meant to be tall and thin, not like squat and wide like a bonsai, but it has that kind of twisty trunk to it. So it's not a straight line. And so what I'm doing is I'm drawing it in silhouette, kind of like an outline first, so that when we look at it from the main entrance of the city, you'll get the look of that silhouette. I then will eventually push that silhouette so it's not all on the same axis. So like like the trunk of the tree at the bottom might be closer to you, and then it might twist away from you. But I'm just drawing in the silhouette first. So if anybody builds big like that, let me know, because that's the only approach I can think of. And then I'm just going to place like ovals and circles and stuff kind of like up the skeleton, as to say, okay, it's this wide here, it's that wide there, and whatever. And then, I mean, obviously I'm not doing this all by myself. Once I get kind of like the form in, I can grab some people from Vast and say, okay, look, we got to fill this in, like just fill in the curves. I mean, everybody there is a good builder, and like, we have to make this look organic. We're going to be using dead coral and cobble and snow and ice and packed ice and stuff, but it should look really good in the end. But it's very intimidating to work that large. So I put in an infrastructure where there's bubble columns that go to 130, 190, and 240.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, man, best mechanic in the game ever.
Just tree elevators. Yes.
It takes 3 rockets to get to 240, FYI.
Yeah.
Or you could just jump in an elevator and just go get a cup of tea. Like, it's a long ride. It's a really long ride.
I have yet to cover bubble column stuff too heavily in Survival Guide, but once I get to that, I'm just going to be zipping up and down the mountains near my base. I think it's so easy to get around that way.
So good. Speaking of new features added to the game, we had a new snapshot drop in the last week since we did a podcast. Minecraft Snapshot 18W50A, which is the last snapshot of the year, confirmed from Mojang. What were some of the things that stood out to you in the Minecraft Snapshot this week?
I think the functionality for some of those new blocks is probably the highlight. Having blast furnaces and smokers actually reveal their purpose to us at last was wonderful. It's very cool. Blast furnaces are for ore smelting only, and they do that twice as fast as a furnace. I'm pretty sure people have done speed tests for them, and it is roughly twice as fast. Smokers do the same, but for food. So it's not completely replacing furnaces. Furnaces still do all of the above and at the usual speed. But when it comes to late game stuff, you can branch out. You can start building, furnace arrays that are specifically for smelting ores, and you will have the blast furnace to do that. In fact, I'm pretty sure that also includes glass, like smelting sand into glass, but I haven't tested that myself, and I don't think anybody really mentioned it. So
no, yeah, I didn't see that. I don't know if it's only ores. If it doesn't affect glass, then it's not as big of a help as you think, because the other thing would be netherrack into nether brick.
Yes, yeah, and so I'm fairly certain the blast furnaces are going to take care of any materials which are not food. But yeah, again, need to kind of make sure that they're covering the full range of things that you would want to smelt fast. But of course, we still have furnaces for that. That's the main thing. So I'm glad that they are diversifying that and lending, like, if effectively Minecraft has more of a tech tree now than it did, which is exciting as a prospect, because before we were just used to using furnaces for the entire game and then, modifying furnaces from there, whether it's in like a mod pack or if it's, turning it into a giant automatic smelter array. But yeah, blast furnaces will potentially make that a lot faster, and maybe it's going to have the effect that we suggested it might back in, whatever podcast that was a few episodes ago, where we said, well, if people's endgame furnace arrays are going to be full of things that can smelt stuff twice as fast, then maybe that reduces lag on a server because they're not using as many, because it all happens super quickly, so there's no need for 64 furnaces when you could have 16 blast furnaces doing more or less the same thing. We also
the bottleneck there is that the hoppers won't be able to keep up.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. I'm curious about that. But considering that a regular furnace would smelt stuff at a much slower rate than the output of a hopper anyway, I think it's probably not going to
might not be close to it.
Yeah, it's not going to be too much of a problem unless you're bottlenecking it through a single hopper that's going to have 64 items going through it at once. So it's gonna involve a little bit of a rejigging with the redstone just to make things a little bit smarter, I think. But for the most part, it's a good change, and it's interesting to see them actually open to adding stuff like faster smelting, which I'm sure people have wanted for the longest time. Because
I mean, you can. Sorry, go ahead.
Half of Minecraft is just waiting around for stuff to happen when you get to that stage of the game, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, Ilmango made a video, and it's something like 7,000 items per hour or something. Yeah, bananas. It's the same idea. His design really didn't change. It's this auto smelter that puts everything in the furnaces at the exact same time, so it doesn't waste any fuel. And it just happens to be that's the same 8 or 11 furnaces or whatever his max lineup was as his furnace array, except for of course instead of 3,000 or 3,500 items, it goes 7,000 because they're blast furnaces as opposed to regular furnaces.
Hmm.
I'm a little surprised that it's just a faster UI. Like it's not like you can actually input two different things from two different sources. Like for example, you're smelting iron twice as fast, but you're not smelting two items at once. Like you can't smelt iron and netherrack at the same time.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm curious as to I mean it's a straight up, I guess it's just a speed improvement. But for ores, you're just like, well, it's awesome for food in the smoker, but for ores, you're like, well, once I have an iron farm and a gold farm, I don't have any ores to smelt anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Once you're getting that stuff from automatic farms of other kinds, and you're getting them in ingot form instead of the actual ore blocks, I suppose that's a different prospect. But then, that's when you get into stuff like sand into glass, and netherrack into nether brick. And stuff.
And that's where my ears perk up.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. The other thing that they updated was villagers and changes to raids, along with some other small things like, I don't know, there's a new cat in the game.
Yes, so excited for Good Times with Scar having Jelly in the game at last. And I've seen a few people, there's a rabbit in the game that if you name tag a rabbit Toast, it turns into a rabbit that was, I think, Notch's girlfriend's rabbit or something like that. And so somebody on the Minecraft Reddit spawned in the cat on top of that rabbit and was like, "Hey, look, Jelly on toast," which I thought was kind of adorable. But yeah, we've had we forgot to talk about barrels. Barrels are a thing now as well.
Right. I skipped past some of the stuff because some of the things were just like the word functionality was, I don't know, maybe loosely.
Yeah, barrels aren't really anything right now. I mean, they're chests that you don't have to have a block on top of, or you don't have to have an open block above them for them to open, right? Because you can just go through the inventory of a barrel by right clicking on the block. But that's it. Somehow, that's it. And it's not like a larger chest inventory. You can't have like a double chest size inventory in a single barrel. There are some unused textures of the barrels being full of stuff. I think there is one that's full of fish, which again kind of implies that they might have something to do with the fishermen villagers. But yeah, there's not really much special about barrels other than, they're chests you can kind of tuck away in little cubby holes if you've not got the space to open a normal chest because there's a solid block above it. That's really it. So a little bit disappointed in that maybe, but I don't know what else they might have done with them except maybe use them as like a storage for fluids. So if you wanted to put like several buckets of water in a single barrel, you could do that and just have like a water source you can constantly take from. But you can already do that with water. there's no reason for you just not to make an infinite water source. So it's,
I feel like one of the things that they could do with barrels, and technical community that's listening, let me know because I'm curious about this, is that if you put something in a chest, does the game itself then treat that chest differently? Like if you've got a chest full of cobble and a chest full of wood, does the game know the difference? Because if that was the case, then if you filled a barrel with cobble, it would be cool if the top texture of the barrel changed to make it look like it was full of cobble.
Yeah.
Alleviating the need to put signs or item frames on all of your storage. Like if you could just have a bunch of barrels all lined around and they all have different tops to them, which wouldn't have to be anything new. You just recycle the existing texture of those blocks, right? Like just put the cobblestone texture, inside the barrel texture, just copy and paste it and have it appear when it's full of cobble. I thought the limitation on the barrels might be like, hey, they're a storage bin, but you can only put one kind of item in it. Like once you put cobble in there, then the only thing it will accept is cobble.
And then you could almost use that as like an item filter technology as well, if you wanted to.
That would be a really cool idea too. Now I didn't try it myself, but I did see in a YouTube video, I think it was Cub Fan that I watched, where he was testing out the furnaces and all of the hoppers pulling items out of the furnaces were pointing into barrels. So barrels can accept hoppers, much like a chest does.
Yeah. I feel like they've just got the same kind of chest code copied and pasted onto them, as far as I can tell. It's probably a little bit more sophisticated than that behind the scenes, but I'm just putting it in layman's terms here.
Yeah, in terms of what we can see, but yeah, that looks good. And the other thing that they said they added, but I didn't hear it or see it, was the bell sound.
This seems
there's
to
a bell
be
animation.
It seems to be working for some people and not for others, because I was watching my buddy Ectavink stream the other night, and he was right clicking on a bell. It was ringing, like there was actually a bong kind of sound. So I wonder if that's just a hardware thing somehow. Like there's a sound file in the game that for whatever reason is being accessed for some users and not others. But I've definitely heard it, and it sounds like the ringing of a bell. It sounds like a low kind of sonorous bell sound to me.
Weird. I like the animation. I mean, I thought that looked cool. And the other thing that I tried that they didn't talk about at all, because I thought that they might put it in there without letting anybody know, but you still can't put lanterns on the sides of things.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think they said they were going to do that. Or maybe they said that about the bells. I'm forgetting. But one of those things you couldn't add to the side of things, and now you can.
The bell you can, the lantern you can't. When I did the bell, I thought, ooh, like my brain just kind of lit up, and I just immediately went to the inventory and grabbed a lantern. I was like, oh, it didn't work.
Yeah.
I really wanted those to go on the side.
One thing I would love to see with the bells is some sort of redstone functionality. I would love to have redstone functionality for most of these things, actually. Thinking about maybe having the barrel being part of an auto-smelting setup, I would love to have at least like a redstone signal that happens when you ring the bell. They were talking about that with the lectern, just sort of cryptically on Twitter before they announced the lectern originally. They said, oh, what if it has a redstone signal if it's got a book in it or not? And I think having like ringing a bell and that triggering some kind of redstone mechanism would be really great. Or alternatively, have the bell be able to be rung remotely by pulling a lever. I think one of the things people suggested on Ecta's stream was that you put the bell like above the door to a shop. Say you're on a multiplayer server and you've got a shop. They open the door, they walk in, they step on a pressure plate, it rings the bell as though it's one of those shop doorbells kind of things.
Yeah, that kind of thing would be really cool. The other thing that you could potentially do is like use it as a like I'm thinking specifically the new blocks. I should talk about the block before I talk about the idea, but like blast furnaces and smokers and things like that. Like I feel like the comparator output or something on those could be different than say a furnace. I'm not even sure what the comparator output is on a furnace, but I'm wondering if like because of the faster, I guess you would just put it on the hopper, but like the faster output, you could potentially have a faster redstone tick coming like a frequency, from those.
You could turn them into a clock or something. Yeah, that'd
something like that. Yeah, like I don't know exactly what. I mean, because eventually they run out of fuel, or they run out of something. But it's one of those things where it would be neat to have. I mean, I'm just thinking about more. Maybe it's like the fun side of things. Like you're cooking a bunch of chicken and you've got a restaurant build, and every time new chicken comes up, it like the redstone output creates a ding. Maybe
order up kind of thing. Yeah.
It has the bell. I don't know whether that's a thing. I mean, these are all things that you could potentially do with hoppers, but I feel like sometimes items go through hoppers so quickly that the signal isn't strong enough, like it doesn't actually read it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the level of redstone where it gets beyond me. Like I'm not quite sure how many ticks all that kind of stuff takes, but there's some interesting stuff there.
We should talk a little bit about the changes to villagers briefly, because we had this is going to be a very chunk mail heavy episode. We didn't really mention that too much at the top of the show, but we mentioned it last week. We want to basically make the rest of this episode, the main bulk of the episode is going to be answering community messages, because we get a lot of those. It's been really nice reading a chunk mail basically every week since we started the show, more or less.
Yeah, it's been about that, hasn't it?
We wanted to kind of clear out the inbox before the holidays, make sure some of these questions got answered, and we had a very specific email relating to the villagers from this snapshot from Coco, who's a member of our Discord. Thank you, Coco. Who said, so in this week's snapshot, 18W50A, Mojang added villager variants for the swamp and jungle biomes, but there are no villages for these biomes yet, and I'm really excited to see both. What we've seen so far has been amazing, a huge upgrade from the villages we already had. I think the swamp villages won't be too different to what we've already got, maybe just more rustic and wet, but I'm really curious to see how jungle villages turn out. What do you all think? I think having villagers up in the trees would be much more immersive. And unfortunately, Mojang has confirmed that villages won't naturally generate in swamps or jungles. In fact, all of the villages that they planned to include or update are already in the snapshot. So that's taiga, savanna, plains, snowy villages now as well. And there's one other that I'm forgetting. Desert, that's the one. So all of the new villages are in the game, and that means that the villagers who have costumes for swamps and jungles, and I think there might be one other costume that's like related to a biome, are basically just for if you breed villagers in those biomes, or maybe spawn them in creative using spawn eggs, and that's how you'll get those villager costumes. But you'll have to build the villages yourselves, and whether that's a source for player creativity to custom build a swamp or a jungle village yourself, or if that's just a bit of creative cop out on Mojang's part, there is a lively debate happening. What do you think about that? What do you think they should have added swamp and jungle villages, or do you think maybe that's a little bit too much and they're letting players take the lead on those?
I think it's a combination. I think that having most of the biomes that matter having villages. There's no ocean village either. There's a lot of other biomes that could potentially have those kinds of auto-generated things happening. But I think that they've done the bulk of it. Like, so out of the 7 biomes or 8 biomes, here's like 6. Here's a chunk to show you how we've done it. And that, I think, like you said, inspires the player to maybe do other things.
Mm-hmm.
However, all the videos that I've been watching about the new villages and the new raids, the villages are still not being generated in a way that, to me, feels, what's the word I'm looking for? They don't look good. The villages themselves, the houses will be taking, like, there was 2 houses that were spawned on top of each other. Like, there's just things that make no sense. It makes the weird floaty mountains that happen sometimes in extreme hills look like child's play. Like, some of these villages are wonky.
Yeah, I think they've still got to like fine tune some of the code to make sure some of these generating oddities don't happen. I think that's more of a problem with the current code, because that even happens in 1.13.2 when I was exploring a desert in the survival guide. I found a desert that looked like it had been hit by an earthquake because it had generated on top of a sand dune, and one half of a library kind of house with the bookshelves was like up on one part of the hill, and the other part had like slid down to the bottom of this sand dune, and it just kind of bisected the house completely, and goodness knows where half of the villagers were trapped inside. But I think they're probably still taking the code from the most recent version and applying it to these new villages in spots, even though they've got these jigsaw blocks that now kind of arrange villages in a certain way. I think there's still a little bit of headway to be made on those bugs.
Yeah, but even in the best situation, the villages still do look kind of plunked. So then you take that and you put that in a swamp that has water everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
And then also think about just how many trees and foliage and all that kind of stuff is in a jungle. And I would not be surprised if it was, 1, really technically challenging, 2, just not aesthetically pleasing. Like, they might even get it to sort of maybe kind of work, and they might ultimately just be like, look, this looks terrible. It would be better for the player to build it themselves, because when we auto-generate it, 9 times out of 10, it looks like garbage.
Yeah.
Compared to, like, say, the Plains Village or the Desert Village, that 9 times out of 10 look great. So I think it could be just a simple artistic / technical decision to be like, no, let's encourage the players to build their own Ewok village, and not have a village like mow a hole in the middle of a jungle, which, let's face it, that would look weird, right?
Yeah.
Because you're gonna have like half jungle trees, and like it's a way. I'm imagining the same sort of thing that would happen is what happened on the Citadel when we moved it from a realm to a server, and that we had a bunch of these displaced chunks, and there were trees that were cut in half vertically. Like, it was just really bizarre. And I would imagine that's probably what happened. Just from what I've learned about this kind of stuff, I would say that's probably what happened, and I'm okay with it. I think not having swamp villages, I wouldn't want to live in a swamp. And not having jungle villages is fine. I think it encourages the player, and then keeps the world looking, the way that Mojang envisioned it.
I actually started my villager breeder on DV Season 4 up in the air in a jungle, and had like minecart tracks going up to it if I wanted to retrieve them to put in my little villager trading area. But I kind of think if I did that in the new update when it finally arrives, then I would have a ton of jungle villagers to live in this dinosaur skeleton that I built down there. And I don't know, I like the idea of that. I like them having different costumes. And right now, we were talking about this earlier in the week, actually. We were saying, like, it's kind of difficult to distinguish the villagers based on what their costume is. Like, the costumes don't feel like such an intuitive thing yet. It just kind of confuses you with how many villagers are there. But eventually, once we get used to, the one with the monocle is the cartographer or whatever, the one with the
Sure.
big wide brimmed hat is definitely the farmer. It's going to be so much easier to look at them at a glance and know, like, okay, that over there is the one I want to trade with, instead of going around right clicking on every brown coated villager going, are you the farmer? So it's gonna be nice to do that. There is one other change I wanted to touch on briefly, and that is they have these jewels on their belts now, which actually indicate how many trades have been unlocked. So they start off with like a little stone gem kind of thing on their belts, and then once you trade with them and unlock more trades, that changes to a gold one and then to a diamond one. So you can now also see at a glance which is the villager you've traded with the most. So if you have, say, like a whole range of clerics, and you're like, okay, the one I've traded with the most is the one who's got the really good bottle of enchanting trade that I want at the end of you look for the cleric with the diamond kind of button on their belt, and that's how you know that's that one. So again, there are even more permutations to villager costumes, but even more ways of telling at a glance instead of going around talking to the entire village to make sure you're trading with the right person.
And I think they also added another layer to the textures of the villagers. Like they have like like if you were to look at the texture files, which I haven't, but it looks like there's like a texture for the villager and then like a texture for their costume. Like there's an overlay sort of thing. So that opens up some custom textures. Like say you're doing a sci-fi build or a futuristic build. And if there's data in there to change something like a jewel, or even just like change the outer texture file for this particular trade opening up, that means that you could maybe have, something similar to like say Star Trek badges or, command insignia or something like that. So the person with 1 bar is a low trade, and the villager with 3 bars on their chest or something like that is a better trade. I mean, you could also go so far as to turn them all into robots and have numbers on their chests. I mean, like you could really, if there's that kind of like UI integration into the textures, then that opens up a lot of creativity for people that want to do some really cool stuff. Like I'm now just kind of going down this rabbit hole in my head of like, well, what if I changed all the villagers so they don't have faces? They just have like those digital, like the digital faces that robots have, like where they have like the little pixelated smile and
the
happy kind of faces and sad faces.
The Daft Punk helmet kind of thing, where like there's a scrolling display that tells you what their most reasonable trade is.
I want Dead Mouse as a villager. That would be fantastic.
Absolutely.
Oh man, too funny. Well, speaking of textures, we actually got another email from a listener shortly after the episode. I believe it was last week, and it is from Jay Glenn. And he had said, hey, if you guys are ever confused about what textures got updated, take a look at this cool site. It is called texturecomparison.myportfolio.com. He said that Azumavoid pointed out to him a while ago, and while it's not comprehensive, it's pretty good comparison for all the blocks. Cheers and keep it up, regarding our podcast. I can't remember whether I mentioned this site on the show proper or in the render distance last week or the week before, but I have seen it before. However, at the time, it was not as updated as it is now. The last update on the site is now December 12th, so only a few days ago, shortly after week 50 came out. So the textures on this site have been updated for the latest snapshot. So thanks very much, Jay Glenn, for pointing that out. There was also a feature of this in one of the Wells Night videos that were out recently. It is a really cool way to quickly scroll through and find out like what block do I want to go into my texture thing and take a good look at. Like it's just a quick little indication like, yes, this got updated. You may not be able to tell from the website precisely what changed. Sometimes you can, but it is at least an avenue for you to say like, oh, they changed stone bricks. I can't tell from the website, but I bet if I go into the file on my computer, I can probably figure out what happened. And so it's a really, really good resource for that. It's a little bit difficult in terms of the language. He's got 1.13, V1, V2, V3, and then week 50. Now at the top of the page, he indicates what version of the snapshots and what version of the texture packs are where. There's a little bit of a legend at the top there. Unfortunately, when Mojang put out the latest snapshot, they said, we've updated some textures with absolutely no context. So I don't know whether the week 50 snapshot was, we've included 3.3 textures in the snapshot, or they've gone beyond 3.3 and fixed some more things in the snapshot. So I don't know whether 3.3 and week 50 are synonymous or whether they're different. And I am not taking the time to go through every texture and figure out what's changed. But it's an excellent look, because if you've got something that's changed and you don't know why you like it or don't like it, then you can go back and say like, oh, version 2 was that. I preferred version 2. And that's why I don't like version 3.3 or whatever that happens to be. The one thing that I caught, or two things that I caught in this scroll that I did not realize changed, and significantly, are glowstone and netherrack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember seeing some notes earlier that Jappa said that glowstone was going to be made more glowy and netherrack was going to be made more rough again. And that seems to have happened. It was a lot smoother around like the V2 kind of texture. And then this most recent one is a little bit rougher. It's got a little bit more kind of texture to it, in the same way that he's added more texture to cobblestone, and whether you like that or not is by the by. I think netherrack definitely looks a lot less noisy. It seems a lot less random, but it's still got that sort of gross thing that started to dip out when he radically changed it and is now kind of creeping back in. It looks a little bit more organy again. And
yeah,
I think that's a
upping the
change.
contrast. Yeah, I mean the netherrack is fine. I mean, it's not something I'm necessarily going to build with, so it doesn't really faze me. But something that I do notice specifically, that in this screenshot that they have it next to the nether quartz in the netherrack, is that the nether quartz is a lot easier to see.
Yeah,
like
it stands out a little more.
Really going to be able to spot that from a mile away. And again, I feel like that contrast and clarity shift is what's pushing a lot of these updates. It's cool. Thank you very much, Jay Glenn, for pointing that out.
And I'm so glad that somebody has done this website as well, because it really does make understanding the changes a little bit clearer. So props to whoever is responsible for the texture comparison site.
Yeah. There was one other texture too that I wanted to. There was a positive change. Oh, andesite. Again, really subtle. Really subtle. They changed the direction of the grains and they did a bunch of other things, but it's actually pretty good now. Because I think my complaint with version 3 was that it was really hard to tell the difference between stone and andesite.
Yeah,
like it was just really hard to see the difference in it because of the way that they've changed the way that the grain of the stone goes. I think it might stand out a little bit more. So it's nice to grab onto the positives. We tend to. I know that we've got complaining a little bit on the show, and I wanted to make sure we grab some things that we like. Yeah. Picky artists are picky. Hey, get over it.
Yeah. Speaking of picky artists, I'm interested to see how some of the picky artists decide to use some of the new slab and stair and wall variants. Because going back to my buddy Ector's stream from the other night, he was building with endstone brick slabs and stairs, and as soon as he started building a wall out of it with a little bit more kind of block variation in there and kind of having supporting structures made out of stairs and slabs, I kind of went, oh yeah, endstone brick is basically just stone brick with a really different color sort of set, like a different color palette to it. And I kind of thought, why don't I use that more? And I'm like, oh right, that's because there aren't any slabs and stairs for it. So yeah, I'm eyeballing endstone brick again and thinking maybe I should do some more stuff with this. It certainly justifies quite how much endstone is available to you once you get out to the end and just mine up one of those islands. So I'm eyeballing that stuff. And that actually ties into our next user-submitted question, our viewer-submitted question, I should say, from the Pro Prince, who says, hey guys, with all of the 1.14 slabs and stairs coming into the game, would you want to see any other missing or niche items added? As an example, we have hay bale blocks, but not sugarcane blocks. And this is something that's actually solved by the Quark mod, because Quark actually has sugarcane walls. I think I used them myself in the Division SMP server, which is one where we had Quark installed. So the Pro Prince says that they would like black nether brick, flint blocks, wood chest variants, and maybe an ore added to the end, the same way that quartz comes from the nether. How about you, Joel? What would you add that's already in the game but you want a block variant of?
So I already have black nether brick, but I guess he means in addition to...
Yes, rather than a retexture actually being like a whole separate brick material.
So have there be the red nether brick, the wine-colored nether brick, and then the black be like a separate thing.
Yeah.
Because one of the reasons why I did make the black nether brick is because it gives me stairs and slabs that I can use for roofs and things. Where my brain went on this, and we end up coming back to this again, I think, in a later email, but I like the idea of terracotta stairs. I know people want to get into concrete, but I've been playing on Vastin with a custom texture pack where Germsy Boy has turned concrete blocks into various different types of roof shingles.
Hmm.
Now, it's specifically, Vastin is meant to be a medieval kind of style. So anything that was futuristic, that kind of said, well, we don't need concrete, right? We don't need these bright colors. We're going to turn them into something useful.
And Fix It
So,
touched on this last week, actually, saying
yes,
that he was
precisely.
expecting concrete stairs and slabs to be added. So it was like, hey, let's use these for roofs now so that we can have way more variation when they actually arrive.
Yeah.
And then they didn't.
Yeah, but what I'm thinking in terms of just like multifunctionality, like Mojang has said a number of times that they don't want to just add a block into the game that does one thing. They want it to be multiple things. So I like the idea of terracotta stairs, but if you craft them into tiles. So the idea being like you can use your regular terracotta blocks, but if you do like maybe a 2x2 or even a 3x3, I'd be okay if it was expensive. Those terracotta blocks would then get turned into tile blocks. And if the tile blocks also had stairs and slabs, then you could have a red tile roof. You could have a blue tile roof for things like, so I don't know, like a Greek, like a modern Athens or a modern Greek build with the white, concrete walls and the blue roofs. I just like the opportunities there to have terracotta, which is a real material used in roofing, and I think would be educational for the Minecraft player. It doesn't make it super easy because mesas are sometimes hard to find. They might have to travel a long way to mine everything. I think that would be an excellent way to get some additional colors for your roof blocks and have it not all be just black. Now, one of them obviously could be a dark, your dark brown or whatever. You could have like your dark, like shingled roof or asphalt roof or something like that. But I think that terracotta crafted into tiles would be great because then you could use that tile texture flat on the ground for like tiled floor in the kitchen or, tiled, you could use it for different things.
Adding some texture to paths, that kind of thing. Just having some bricks that weren't straight up stone or some variant on the above would be kind of useful. Yeah,
exactly. I'd be down for like it's very similar to purpur because purpur is just a straight 2x2 square pattern,
yeah,
right, within a block. And if that was something like, imagine if that was like a terracotta color, like a pot color or like a flower pot color, or even like a blue, like the same way that lapis has got when you make a lapis block. If you had like blue tiles and you could put that on a roof, like that would look stunning.
Yeah. On the subject of Quark, actually, Quark has Midori blocks, which are basically the same as purpur, but I think they're crafted with cactus green, where purpur would be crafted with popped chorus fruit, and they are green variants of purpur, the same kind of texture, sort of onion skinned over the top of a green block, and they are really different. They're quite an interesting color, and it's something that isn't really present in current Minecraft, except maybe in some of the melon stripes. And so they're worth looking into if you're interested in some extra building stuff and want to install a module or two of Quark in your worlds. But for me, actually, I'm going to dive back into Quark one more time because Quark has paper walls. And I think those are a really great idea and a very popular idea too. People are always trying out Asian-style builds, kind of Japanese shoji paper walls. Dividing rooms look really great, but it's not something that's possible to do in Minecraft right now. Even things like white stained glass doesn't quite have the same effect because of the amount of transparency it has. Having a kind of opaque block that occupies the same space as an iron bar or a glass pane would be really great, and it would definitely add a lot more authenticity to when you want to build Japanese-inspired builds. So that would be nice and easy to do. Paper already exists in the game. All you need to do is maybe, because actual shoji is like paper with like sticks in a frame, you could essentially do the same thing as a crafting recipe in Minecraft. You could just have paper in a plus shape and then sticks on the four corners or something like that. It'd be nice and easy to implement.
Yeah. So I was going to ask that, like, if you wanted like a paper block, like a square block, or a paper pane.
I think a combination of the two, even just something that you could make like glass and then would turn into panes from there, would be good. But if it came to it, I would settle for just having a pane that went down the center of a block like a divider, in the same way that iron bars and glass panes do.
Right. My issue with that, unfortunately, is how the game currently handles the lighting, and that I never like the way that glass panes look compared to glass blocks.
Yeah.
So if I have an opportunity to make a glass window wall thick enough to house glass blocks, it always looks so much better. Even with my connected glass texture, that you can always see the squares in the panes.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas for whatever reason, when you connect the glass blocks, which have the same connected texture, you can't see the edges of it, and I don't know why that is. Maybe it's just because like the front and back edge of the block are just so far apart that you just can't see that, or I'm not sure how the physics work. If anybody technical can tell me why that happens with glass panes versus glass blocks, because I think it would be an awesome idea to have a semi-transparent thing, even if you have to have shaders on to see it. But like if you and I were playing in the same world and I was walking behind your paper wall and you could see my shadow
And a kind of
like going
silhouette
back
thing,
and forth,
yeah. Oh,
like
yeah.
that would be really cool. And I think unfortunately that effect would be broken if the same lighting effect was being applied to paper panes. Like if you could also see the grid, you would kind of lose it. But a seamless paper pane, whoa, man, yeah, that would be really cool.
If you could do some kind of like shadow theater thing, that would be super awesome. But we're getting a little bit too deep in the future.
There's a couple of YouTubers that come to mind that I think would have a lot of fun with that. Too funny. Our next chunk mail comes from Bexy, and they would like to say, I loved hearing all of your opinions on the new textures as well as the dragon fight shenanigans. I thought I would share my experience of dragon fights as well. I've mostly fought the dragon in groups and large groups that are around 30 players. Holy crap. Which means that we can have a bit of fun with how the dragon is killed. We've done beds before with snowballs and the crystals. This time, however, we beat the dragon purely with sticks and mostly iron armor, just because we could. Not only did it work, but it was over pretty quickly. Well, with 30 on 1, I would imagine it would be. And it was absolutely hilarious to watch. I think everyone had a really good time working on it together, and hopefully the same group will get to raid a woodland mansion probably in the same way, with some sort of challenge that they put out for themselves. Sticks? I don't have that kind of time, Bexy.
I almost feel sorry for the dragon. Just being slowly beaten to death with sticks sounds rough.
Yeah. Poke.
But I think these challenges are what helps keep the game a little fresh. Remind me to tell you about the time that we cleared out an ocean monument using only signs. That's probably one for another episode, but there's a lot of fun things you can do once you get into the mechanics, and when you've been around the block a few times as far as Minecraft goes, you can come up with some very creative solutions to these boss fight type situations. So it was funny when the Dragon's Head item was first added in the 1.9 snapshots before it actually appeared as a feature of End City ships, because I think they added it to the creative inventory before they added it in the world at all. And there was this kind of thread of speculation on Reddit, people asking, well, how are we going to be able to obtain the dragon's head? And I joked that you'd only be able to obtain it by killing the dragon with a charged creeper, which is basically the way you get mob heads aside from that. So yeah, I can imagine somebody has probably done that, like found a way of attacking the dragon with charged creepers at some point. I imagine, Tango or any of the technical folks from SciCraft will probably have found a way to do that.
Yeah. This weekend, actually, Alistair and Mattcast on the Citadel took on the dragon. Mattcast wanted to get some Elytra because there's been some issues with our end and shulker boxes, and he had tried it and he went and he lost his Elytra, and I thought, oh dude, like that, it's getting to the point where some people are just not having fun. So we implemented two things. Well, one, the dragon dropping Elytra has been a data pack that I put on the server quite a while ago. It's just that we haven't fought the dragon since. I wasn't around because I was doing some other stuff, some charities work with Vaston, but they were saying that the dragon fight had changed with the implementation of the data pack. And I'm just sort of now dawning as to why that might have been. The dragon did not go through the second pattern of landing on the end portal middle. Or the exit portal for them to go attack and gather dragon's breath and fight the thing. I'm assuming because the data pack says dragon drops the Elytra, they probably don't want the dragon to die at any point above the exit portal, because then that Elytra has a chance to just go into the world. Unless you have a collection area, which we do, it's still possible that you might not get back to your spawn point, your world spawn, in time to grab the Elytra. So I imagine that they probably forced the dragon in the data pack to land in other places. But what they said was, in that respect, the dragon was then no longer attacking them. So the first part of the fight was typical. But after they killed all the end crystals, the dragon really got passive and didn't attack them at all, and it became like harder to kill because if it was swooping down, it felt arbitrary. It didn't feel like it was attacking. It didn't feel like it was part of a pattern. It just kind of like decided to swoop down.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether that's necessarily a challenge to the dragon fight because they felt that it was maybe not as aggressive, but also then they had to try and figure out how to kill it without having the Elytra really drop off into the void.
Yeah.
Because you don't want the dragon, you don't want that to happen over the edge of the main end island.
That's how the
so
dragon fight used to be with before 1.9. The dragon,
Right.
once you took out all the crystals, it just kind of like flew around and waited for you to kill it with bow and arrows. And you know, the only chance you got to have a melee hit on it was when it would swoop down like that to try and attack you. So almost reverting the dragon fight back to pre 1.9 days in that case.
Yeah. The other data pack that we implemented, again, probably for the quality of life of other people on the server, is endermites will burrow into purpur and turn into a shulker.
To spawn shulkers. Yeah, that's
yeah. So rather than going to the end and potentially losing your elytra, because that was the thing. Like, you know, you'd go to get the shulkers, you'd get 3 or 4, and even though you might have been smart and put them in your ender chest, at some point you probably died, and it's not, you can't get back to your stuff fast enough if you died with your only set of elytra. So for the sake of shulkers and everybody doing cooler things on the server, we implemented that. And it's still not easy. I tried it after implementing the data pack to see if it worked. It took me 10 minutes to get 1 shulker.
Yeah. Yeah,
because it's a chance that an ender might spawn. Like, you don't get it. It's not
relatively
right?
rare, isn't it? I've actually been using ender pearls to get around a fair amount between builds in my survival guide world, and I still haven't had a chance to explain endermites because none of them have shown up yet.
Yeah, and therein lies the not broken part of this data pack, I think. Because, I mean, as you're bouncing yourself back and forth in this little purpur pit, you're constantly hitting the wall and killing yourself, and then you've got to eat food, wait to heal so you don't die, and then fire the ender pearl back and forth and back and forth. And you can't do it without all your gear on, because then you really will take a lot of damage. Like, you kind of have to maintain, you know, some of your stuff on you. So it's tedious. I remember that from setting up some of the Enderman farms that we have in the end, that you need to put an Endermite in a minecart, and like all the videos make it look real easy, but it's not. It's not at all.
Yeah, it's a little tricky. I think in the interest of time, I want to skip ahead to one of the other questions we got from a member of our Discord. This one comes from Cameron, who says, "Hello, Joel and Pixel. I've enjoyed the Spawn Chunks podcast immensely so far. The series has been a great inspiration, and it's nice to see the different and informed perspectives that you both bring to the discussion. Thank you very much. If I can get my words out, I will try and give you an informed perspective on this. Microsoft have stated that they want to make Minecraft the first 100-year game. It's certainly regaining popularity since they started fleshing out the game's existing content in the past few updates, and will hopefully continue to do so in the future ones. Once regions like the Underground, the Nether, and the End are updated, what do you think is in store for Minecraft's future? Machine learning, controlling things like difficulty and NPC interaction? Procedurally generated features, more immersion via virtual reality, a deviation from the medieval themes of Minecraft, or perhaps implementation of radical yet popular changes such as microblocks, or maybe a complete decentralization of content. How do you think Minecraft as a game will evolve? Thanks for reading, Cameron." So this one obviously has a lot of options here, and I figured it would be worth getting into before we wrap up. There's one other question I do want to read before we wrap up, and we will try and get to the couple of questions that we have missed in the post-show, in the second half of the render distance. But I really wanted to dive into this one because it's an interesting question.
Yeah, it's funny, like, when I started producing content for Minecraft, doing YouTube videos and streaming and stuff, I was like, man, am I late to the game? Like, is this going to be worth, trying to generate some following and enjoy the time I'm playing in Minecraft and become part of this community? Like, is it just like an uphill battle? Is it so populated and possibly even on its way out, with things like Fortnite and Overwatch and other things being so prevalent on Twitch? And I actually just read an article that Alistair shared on my Discord the other day from Ars Technica, and the title of the article is "Forget Fortnite, My Son is Still Obsessed with Minecraft." Now, it's an interesting read, and hold on to your nuggets if you go in and read it, adults, because he analyzes Minecraft and his son's behavior in terms of medical addiction, and it's a little eye opening. It's a little like, oh geez, maybe I spend a little bit too much time in Minecraft myself. When you look at it from that perspective, I think he uses that analogy to illustrate a point, but he illustrates it quite well. And it goes to show that there are kids that are always going to be coming into the age where Minecraft is appropriate, but Fortnite is not.
Mm-hmm.
Or games like Fortnite is not, or parents that just would prefer their kids don't run around and shoot people in video games. Like there's a lot of stuff, you know. I mean, Minecraft has bows and arrows and swords, and there's PvP, but it's more like tag than it really is. I think the difference is just firearms. Like that seems to be
I think
big dividing line.
It is admittedly a little bit more difficult for modern kids to get hold of swords, bows, and arrows than in some countries, at least, it is for them to get hold of firearms.
Yeah, exactly. So I really think that there is some staying power to Minecraft. But what I see it going, or where I see it going, and I believe that Cameron mentioned this in his email about availability. No, it was you. Sorry, it's you in your notes talking about the availability of hardware. I think VR is eventually going to transform Minecraft and take it to the next level. I am disappointed that it has not been more of a focus in either, even if it's just publicity stunts and demonstrations. I'm seeing so much from things like Oculus Rift and a couple of artists that I follow where they're painting in essentially resolutions similar to Minecraft, but they're doing these 3D VR paintings that are animated and they're immersive. They're low res, but they're still every bit as imaginative as anything you've ever seen in Minecraft. I would love to try Minecraft in VR. I don't want to play the thing is I don't want to play Bedrock. Like I want the same experience that I get in Java, but I want it in a VR experience. The ability to look around and be that immersed in the thing that you're building. Like I'm telling you right now, I'd have to bring my barf bag when I'm working on that tree in Vaston. Even on my 27-inch monitor, when I jump off a 250 and the elytra doesn't activate for the first 100 blocks of that fall before the server catches up, woof. Like that. I mean, it's not a bad server to die on because you can get yourself back to geared up in seconds, but it's still that like just gut-wrenching drop of like hitting terminal velocity in the game. And that would be epic, I think, in VR. Recently, there's been some images from, it's not InSight, but it's the other rover that NASA has on Mars. And they've been posting them on Facebook in these 3D rotating photos, things that you can do 360 degrees.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Not a cool experience if you're on a browser on a computer, but if you're on your phone and you have a big enough phone, you don't scroll with your finger. You turn yourself in space.
Yeah, you
like
look
when
around.
You look around the room. Yeah, you as if you're looking through your phone at Mars. It is phenomenal. And to do that in Minecraft with a pair of goggles, I am there. And I think that would open up the game. And I think that we talked earlier about, redstone being training for kind of like, getting your kids into electronics and coding at an early age. I think just the spatial education, the idea of like being inside of a thing and making a thing from the inside and the outside and understanding just spatial mechanics, perspective, distance, all that kind of stuff that would come with VR. I mean, you're talking about people that are going to become engineers, architects, artists, sculptors. Like I think VR is probably where you're going to see Mojang take Minecraft next.
Yeah, I haven't really given a great deal of thought to how developing and kind of emerging technology is going to influence the future of the game because I'm so focused on the now. I'm very much like living in the present as far as Minecraft goes. And machine learning and VR almost would seem too high concept for me, even though I know that VR and even augmented reality versions of Minecraft have been developed. I remember seeing the HoloLens video a while back of the kind of demonstration of Minecraft with that and kind of thinking this all seems very kind of tech demo, but how is a playable version of it going to be made available? I would love to see like having the capability of just viewing something that you have built like on the table of your living room is still pretty awesome. Despite, maybe not being able to navigate around the game in the same way that you might when you were just playing it on a PC or with a VR headset. But I think stuff like that really does come down to the accessibility of the hardware. How possible is it going to be for people to access that kind of stuff in future? How affordable is VR going to be? Considering that they are still developing Minecraft for old hardware because people don't have the money, or they have decided not to upgrade their kids' iPads to whatever the current version is. It's either unaffordable to them, or they don't think it's a necessity. So they're still having to put in quality options that reduce the render distance and the animations and everything just to allow it to perform on older hardware, yet still developing it for the kind of stuff that you need a really powerful computer to do, like having VR running at a frame rate that isn't going to make you throw up and all sorts of stuff like that. So I'm not certain quite how far they can push it without moving the goalposts a little bit and actually shutting out some of the people who are playing on older technology. At what point do we draw the line and say, look, for the future of the game, it is not going to be possible for us to develop on old platforms anymore? It's always heartbreaking to people when this happens. I remember working for Disney when Disney Infinity was the thing, and sadly, RIP, no longer around, but I remember people being very disappointed that the second iteration of that game wasn't coming out on the Nintendo Wii. And I was writing email support for them at the time and going, guys, look, we just don't have the hardware capability on the Wii to run all of the stuff that we want to run. Like, the original Disney Infinity title was fairly stripped back on the Wii anyway, so it's just not possible. But so many people were still using the Wii as a family console, because as a family console it was brilliant and still is. Like, you can still open up Wii Sports Resort and have a great time. So yeah, it's kind of strange to realize that we are going to have to start moving those goalposts at some point. And obviously that's totally up to Mojang, and it depends what you consider the core experience of Minecraft as well, because there are going to be further developments in the Minecraft brand which are not tied into Minecraft as we currently know it. Think about Minecraft Dungeons, which was announced as only one of several other Minecraft branded projects they have in the works. And I'm interested to find out what the others could be, because quite aside from the future of Minecraft on Java or Minecraft on Bedrock, we have these other Minecraft properties that can continue to enhance the experience, do some of the more radical stuff. Dungeons is where you're going to see them putting in decorations for the environment that just aren't possible in a standard Minecraft world without stuff like micro blocks and that kind of, chisels and bits approach to things where everything is chopped up and pixelated down. And we talked more and more about Minecraft becoming a game engine in its own right rather than just a game that people play. And I wonder how much further that has to develop. I think looking at the kind of code side of things, I think Mojang are going to be very protective of the core experience, but they still recognize that the modding scene played a huge part in the rise of the game. And so now they're, opening up code to people. They're kind of displaying stuff on GitHub for people. We talked about, the glass rendering thing earlier, and I wonder if maybe that's something people can fix when it comes to them exposing the code for their new rendering engine. And having players kind of feed their stuff back into the game is just going to allow a new kind of level of interaction between players and devs, which is hitherto unheard of. We've had suggestions going to Minecraft back and forth for years, but actually being able to contribute to the code of things and things being a little bit more open source, that's potentially where the future lies, at least for now. But who can predict what's going to happen 100 years down the line? If this is going to be a 100-year game, I'm not going to be around to see the end of it. Yeah. So that's part of the reason I think I'm more concentrated on the present than anything else.
Yeah, out of curiosity, with all these different IPs that are in mystery, do you have any concerns about the spread of Minecraft and the attention of Mojang into these other IPs, leaving Minecraft a little bit in the lurch, like maybe slower development than people would like, less frequent updates than people would like, because these new IPs need more work?
If you had asked me a year ago, I would have said yes, because that was the time at which we saw the Microsoft side of the team really growing, and they weren't really hiring anybody new for Java, and that was the time when all of the doomsayers in various communities online were saying, okay, Java Minecraft is going the way of the dinosaur. They've got a better platform here. It's running in, C++ or C# or whatever the programming languages they use to code it for the Bedrock editions. That's the way it's going to go. They've got render distance that goes up to 128 blocks when I can barely manage 16 with Optifine. Surely, they're going to start phasing out Java Minecraft. Since then, the Java Minecraft development team has, I think, more than doubled in size. And devs who used to work on Java and then went away for a little bit came back. And suddenly like there seems to be a resurgence in Java, and they are treating Java as a platform that Minecraft is always going to run on. I almost feel like the developers of Java itself might quit before the developers at Mojang do when it comes to that version of Minecraft. But in terms of it being a 100-year game, it's also going to have to be passed on to new people, because these are all adults working on the game. In 100 years, realistically speaking, some of them probably not going to be around. So how the game is going to evolve over the next few years depends on the people more than I think the technology. It depends on people having the right vision for the game. And we're talking in a lot more vague terms than I think Cameron wanted us to, but I'm not ever one given to future speculation. I just hope that whoever takes over from Minecraft, whatever the next generation of Minecraft is, they've got the kind of core philosophy at heart, which is it being a game about creativity and exploration and fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the thing that I'm thinking of is the stuff that I watched with Blizzard. In Warcraft is still, a very popular game. There's lots of people playing it. There's lots of new content, but I definitely felt the division, as Overwatch, Heroes of the Storm, Hearthstone. I know they're all different departments, but it was not so much the division maybe necessarily of the company, but the division of the player base.
Yeah.
Going to different games because they enjoyed those better or whatever. And that's one of the reasons why I don't play Blizzard games anymore, is because a lot of the experience that I had, I liked Warcraft. I liked the World of Warcraft stuff, but it was because it was my pace. Heroes of the Storm, and while fun, was too fast. Like I'm not good at those kind of games. So your level of fun has a ceiling.
Yeah.
So for me, I didn't really enjoy World of Warcraft as much anymore. So then I really only ever had time for one video game in my life anyway. So right now it's Minecraft. And so the switch was easy because of that division of player base. So I'd be curious to see if Mojang looks to examples like Blizzard with Heroes of the Storm and Overwatch, and then takes some of the existing Minecraft flavor and then puts it into other styles of games, so that as your Minecraft player becomes tired of Minecraft and wants to play Fortnite, can also say like, well, I like dungeon crawlers too. Maybe I'd rather play Minecraft Dungeons because I'm familiar with Minecraft, and this is just like a different gameplay, but in the same world that I've already got some nostalgia with. And character, especially if they start to get into story and character. Like if Minecraft Dungeons has more than just like you, the player, and actually has characters, with lore and stuff like that. And those characters can then be put into other games with their, like that character can then be transported into another gameplay type, like, a battle arena or whatever. That could be some really, really fun stuff. But I know we have one last email before we wrap up, and that is from Anagram. She's a member of our Discord and Patreon. Dear Joel and Johnny, it has been a joy to follow your podcast and Discord group almost since the beginning, and to see them both steadily growing stronger. You have expanded my Minecraft world, and I look forward to walking into 2019 with you, which brings me to my question. Leaving 2018 with 20 episodes behind you, what is your vision for the Spawn Chunks in 2019? Well, first, Anagram, thank you very much. That's very sweet. And I'm happy that you've been around for so long. It's really nice to have been getting to know new people in Discord, but also really nice to kind of tip our hats to the people that have been around since basically day one. It's a really, really cool community, and everybody that's old and new is just as welcoming and as warm as their Discord cohorts, which is really, really nice to see. I'm curious, Johnny, like where are your thoughts about where we should take Spawn Chunks in 2019?
Well, I guess we have to figure out roundtable discussions now, which is interesting.
Yeah, that's true.
Because to poach a little bit from the outros here, we actually met what is currently our final milestone goal on the Patreon page, but it's absolutely not our final milestone goal. We just have them drafted in the background and ready to release later on once we've kind of finalized a couple of details. But yeah, we managed to hit right before this podcast. Actually, we hit $101 of our funding total. We're at 41 patrons, which is a massive push from where we were last week. And yeah, somebody joined up and I noticed there was a couple of dollars left. So I just put a thing out on Twitter and was like, hey guys, we've only got $2 left before we hit this milestone goal and we start like evolving the show in new directions. It's a really exciting time. And then, yeah, pointed that out and a couple of other people happened to hop on. So thank you guys all for that. Again, I want to echo what Joel said there and just thank you for all of the support you've shown so far and the continued commitment of the people who've been with us since the beginning. We could not be doing this without you. So vision for 2019. I think we've done a fantastic job of staying consistent with the show because a lot of podcasts you will find people like they take breaks here and there and that's I feel like hurts growth quite a lot. If you can't rely on something to be there for you every week, then you tend to tune out and look for something different. So I would love to continue like after we've had this 2-week break, just start 2019 making the show that we're making now and I think we've got a really solid format here. I don't think there's a huge amount I would change. And most of the feedback we've had from the Smeltery, which is the kind of ore producer Discord chat, where some of our the folks who fund us a little bit more will sort of share feedback about the show. Nobody's really had any solid suggestions of like, I think you're not doing this right, or you should maybe consider doing this. Most of it has just been incredibly supportive of what we already do. I would love to get more guests on the show as well. And the roundtable discussion is going to be a part of that, where we're going to try and have a guest on every month, especially if it makes sense for whatever we want to discuss. And yeah, I think getting more people on board, especially now that we've grown to the point where we have this many shows under our belt, I think we're going to start seeing a few more people getting interested in being on the show. We're going to be able to reach out to more people and see if they're interested in dropping by, even if it's just for 20 minutes to half an hour discussion with somebody who's super into redstone or super into building, that we can really do a deep dive on something that they're passionate about.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that, to kind of reveal a few of the things that we've got coming up, the next Patreon milestone goal, which will be up on the Patreon page probably by the time people listen to the podcast, that is a quarterly patron hangout. We did a surprise for the patrons about a month ago.
Yeah, on Patron Appreciation Day, as
that's right.
Decided to dub it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we jumped into an audio chat with a bunch of people that were in the patron Discord chat, and it was a lot of fun. And it was great to talk to people and hear voices that you normally just see typing, in the chat. And so one thing that we thought we would do is, if we hit our next goal, is to open up a regular patron chat where Johnny and I will be talking specifically about the Spawn Chunks, about what we've been talking about where we're going with the show. It might get into some game related stuff, but mostly more of an inside baseball idea. And that is to make sure that the people that are supporting us on Patreon are getting the show that they want and that they feel that their voices are heard. And I enjoy that. Like, I enjoy that back and forth. And I want to encourage people, because I know how we'll say articulate our Discord is, that if you do have criticism about the show, it doesn't all have to be how great you think the show is. I mean, it's flattering, but I would love to have some constructive stuff in there too. If there's something that you'd like us to touch on more of, if you would like us to complain about textures less, then there's things like that I think would be good to have in there as well. I'd like to do a little bit more interaction personally with some patrons and some people in the Discord. I do find sometimes when I get busy, it's hard to keep up on the Discord. So one of the things that actually I just saw tossed around, I'm going to give a shout out to Stanley, and who was the other person that was talking about it? I think it might have been Mana Chaser. Both of these folks are in the Discord, have been for a while. And they were just saying, like, I should pop into audio chat when I play more often, so that if anybody else in the Spawn Chunks Discord is playing, we could just chat, as opposed to having to have your Spawn Town chat room open in one window while you play Minecraft and have to look over and read the chat. You could just talk to somebody. So that kind of sparked my idea that Johnny and I could potentially explore having a couple of different voice channels in the chat that are specifically meant for, hey, if you're just chilling out and playing the game and you want to talk to somebody, hang out in here. You don't have to, but you can. And that's the kind of thing that I might do. Like, I wouldn't do it when I was streaming, but I would certainly, if I was just mining out some stuff and I wanted to talk to some patrons, I mean, I'm just sitting at the computer playing games anyway. I think it'd be fun. So those are the kind of things that we're going to be, looking at. There's no, I don't want to say, positive, yes, we're doing this and no, we're not doing that, because the lovely thing about podcasts and the lovely thing about Patreons is that they can fluctuate. Like, you can test things out, you can see what works, you can see what doesn't work before we implement any changes or any, we'll say, new developments in the show. We usually bounce it around in that Smeltery chat room with a couple of other people and get feedback, wording on goals, pricing on things, like, what does that feel good? What do you think that will do for existing patrons? Do you think that'll feel worth it? Those kind of things are all really, really fun conversations to have in the Discord. And I'm just looking forward to doing more of that and interacting with more patrons.
To pull back the curtain a little bit further here, one of the other upcoming Patreon goals, which is the one beyond the quarterly patron hangout, is us getting paid basically for our day's work on the show. Joel and I are both like jobbing freelance professionals the rest of the time. I have my part-time job and doing YouTube and stuff on the side. Joel has illustration and design and all of that stuff alongside streaming and doing this and doing the other two podcasts that you do. And who knows, because podcasts just seem to be popping out of the woodwork these days. It's a passion project for us, this, and it has been since the beginning. Ever since we started talking on that first episode of the Citadel Cafe that I popped into, we were like, we should do a podcast about Minecraft one of these days. And it's been incredible so far. And that Patreon goal, allowing us to basically get paid for dedicating the full day of Monday to research for the show, production on the show, paying our way towards, making sure it's audio editing, and that we don't have to worry about doing our jobs on top of this as well. That's a goal that I would love to reach in 2019, not as any kind of, any kind of money grubbing kind of attitude to it, more just so that we can feel like this is part of our lives in that way, like it's all about finding that work-life balance. And while this show doesn't necessarily feel like work, it would be great to treat it as work and put more research into episodes and really deep dive on some of the stuff that we want to talk about. Make sure that we're checking our facts, crossing the T's, dotting the I's.
Exactly.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, and the end result of that, when you and I don't have to split our attention across Monday to various duties plus the podcast, means that everybody listening just gets a better podcast, right? Like that's the end game. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to the roundtables, though those are more than likely going to be, maybe a little bit longer episode. I mean, it just naturally with three voices, if we are able to bring in guests once a month and those kind of things. To be clear, they're not going to be interview shows. They're not necessarily going to be something like Fix It or when we talked with Wells Knight. We'd still like to do those. Those are just going to be separate, kind of like one-off occasions. But the monthly roundtables, now that we've unlocked them, it's just going to be like a real quick rundown of like, here's the news bulletins. We may or may not get into them if they're topical, but then we can just sit around with someone that we haven't had on the show before and just talk about Minecraft and just kind of like see where the conversation leads us in the roundtable. So it might be a nice break from the kind of format that we've got going and just kind of like break things up a little bit in the listening cycle and keep it fresh.
Definitely takes the pressure off the guest. If the guest feels like they're being interviewed as well, it's kind of, you've got to be on your A game. Whereas if it's just like a kind of informal discussion sort of thing, I feel like a lot of people might be a bit more comfortable with that as a format, especially if we're bringing them on and they're like, well, I'm not really anything special. I'm like, no, you are, but you've also got so much to contribute that it's going to be fantastic to get more people on. But with that, I think that's going to wrap up another episode of the Spawn Chunks, and indeed the Spawn Chunks for 2018. I'm having a hard time not expressing how grateful I am constantly at this point, because it's been amazing starting this in 2018, and hopefully 2019 will be just as good. But in the meantime, you can find out more information about the show and links to some of the stuff we've talked about today, including probably a rundown of all of the chunk mail we got at thespawnchunks.com. The music for the show was composed by me, and despite the fact that we have mentioned this several times at this point, The Spawn Chunks is proud to be a listener-supported podcast. If you feel like doing a little bit of giving over this season of giving, then consider putting some value back into the podcast by supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/thespawnchunks. Pledging at any level there will get you an invite to our patrons-only Discord chat and ease us ever closer to our next set of Patreon goals.
Sharing the podcast with your friends is the easiest way to support the show. You can find us at The Spun Chunks on Twitter and Instagram. Personal recommendations still go a long way, despite the fact that we have been doing this for 4 or 5 months now. We are still a considerably young podcast. So while you're playing with your friends, while you're hanging out with your server mates over the holidays, ask them if they listen to the Spawn Chunks, and if they don't, tell them that they should. You can contact the show at thespawnchunks@gmail.com and get your email in the 2019 Chunk Mail section, and you can subscribe to the Spawn Chunks by name on your favorite podcast platform or podcast app. That includes iTunes, Android, Stitcher, and Spotify. The RSS feed for the show is on thespawnchunks.com, and the patron-only RSS feed is the only place that you can listen to the render distance.
My name is Pixlriffs, and you can find most of what I do at youtube.com/pixelriffs, where I have a Minecraft survival guide series for beginners and a multiplayer Let's Play series called Decidedly Vanilla. I'm also the voice for the unofficial Hermitcraft recap, which you can find through a quick YouTube search, and I stream 3 days a week on Twitch, where I might be taking a bit of a hiatus over Christmas, but the rest of the time I'm playing some of the Final Fantasy series and really enjoying myself. Aside from that, I'm at Pixelriffs on both Twitter and Instagram. Joel, where can people find you online?
Everything that I am doing online, including my illustration and design portfolio, is at joelduggan.com. I recently revamped that whole site, so the portfolio and the web store are all brand new. If you're interested in hiring me, just drop me a line through the website. I do the Citadel Cafe podcast about sci-fi and geeky entertainment. We are doing episode 300 this Wednesday. We're celebrating with having multiple hosts all on at the same time. Should be a fun show. Comics Coast to Coast is done for the year. We recorded our holiday special last week with myself, Brian Dunaway, and Hammond Chamberlain, and he is our annual holiday guest, and we talked about Santa Claus, the history, the nervous kids at malls. It was a hoot. So go check out Comics Coast to Coast wherever you find your podcasts. You can follow me on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and Instagram with just my name. Look for me on the Realm of Vastin. I will hopefully be playing a little bit more over the holidays as I have a little bit of downtime. And I would like to thank anyone and everyone that was out supporting Jennifer Harper this past Sunday on the Twitch stream that we did. There was over $600 raised in just the 3-hour stream. I know for a fact that several of the names that I saw scrolling by on the donation list are people that I recognize from the Spawn Chunks community. So on behalf of Grumpy Owl, myself, and Klautos, that is Jennifer's brother, a big thank you for all the people that came out and supported. The GoFundMe for Jennifer is now up over $5,000. I will repost that link in the Spawn Chunks notes this week.
Thanks for visiting the Spawn Chunks. The world outside is infinite, and it looks like it's snowing outside. Happy holidays!